Sourdough starters seem complicated, but what if I told you they're actually low maintenance? Today, I'll show you how to start one with minimal waste and how to use up the discard so you can enjoy homemade sourdough whenever you want, saving you time and money. Let's get started. Hi friend, come on in. Sourdough starters seem intimidating, but aren't as much work as they appear to be. Once established, a strong starter can be safely ignored in the fridge for a month, and with proper preparation, can be left for several months. But how to get started? Well, flour and water is all it takes. The why of a starter is personal. Maybe you have trouble digesting wheat products. Maybe you love the taste of sourdough. Maybe you love making things with your hands. Or maybe you just want to save money. In the end, there are many reasons to make a sourdough starter and just as many ways to make one. This is how I made my sourdough starter with minimal waste and how I use my extra starter that isn't ready for bread baking. I have some flour and water, the most basic of ingredients. I want to do a 1-to-1 ratio of water to flour. I will be aiming for 25 grams of each, but a little more won't hurt. I will be doing this by weight. Using volume measurements, you will need to add more flour than water to get the right consistency. Think 1 tablespoon of water to 2 tablespoons of flour. I'll show you how thick this ends up so you can try to aim for a similar consistency. There is no need to be super precise on this. Approximations will work as well. I just used a scale for mine. The best flour to use is an unbleached whole wheat bread flour. The next best flour is the one you have. I am mixing whole wheat flour with all-purpose flour. For water, I am actually using filtered water that has sat at room temperature. If you don't have a filter, put water in a jar and let it sit out 24 hours, and that will remove most of the chlorination. The reason I am using such a small amount initially is to minimize waste. I am going to get this in a warm location. I have a rubber band around the jar so I can monitor activity level. A marker works too. Just make sure to reset the mark after every feeding. You can feed this every day, but nothing is going to happen. Instead, for the first 2 days, just let it go. No feeding. Place it in a warm location and let it do its work. On the 3rd day, we will come back to it. If you have a little liquid on top, that is perfectly fine. To the starter, we will add in another 25 grams each of flour and water. No discarding. Just add to what you have. We are feeding the yeast and bacteria. We want to make sure the population grows, and discarding at this point will drop the population down. So just give them a feed. I am calling this day 1, even though it has been a couple of days since we started this journey. Day 2, we will feed again exactly like we did yesterday. Add in 25 grams each of water and flour. Give that a good stir. You might be seeing some activity at this point. This is great, but it is a false start. What happens is either the yeast or the bacteria will begin exponential growth, but it is only one group, so that is an overgrowth of one, but not the other. So you might have all bacterial growth, which can produce gas, and hardly any yeast growth, or you might have all yeast without the bacterial growth. In order for the starter to work and taste properly, you need a balanced population of both the lactobacillus and yeast. We will continue feeding. Day 3. Today, I want to discard some of the starter. I normally throw this first discard away since it will have an unbalanced population and might taste funky. I'm not into funky. I will remove 50 grams of starter and feed that to keep growing the starter. You can keep doing additive feeds for another day or two, but at some point you will have to start removing starter or you will end up with a ton of starter. To this 50 grams, I want to add 50 grams of both water and flour. This is a 1-to-1-to-1 feeding ratio. We are looking to maintain this ratio until it begins to double in 24 hours. I did not jump on the sourdough bandwagon when everyone else did. I started my journey a couple of years after that when curiosity finally got the better of me. I had learned at that point that sourdough doesn't have to be sour, and I think that was part of the decision that pushed me to give it a try. While I was growing my starter, I did experiment with other traditional sourdough techniques, like no knead and making a poolish. This is where my pizza recipe came from and the poolish bread. Once I got my starter going, I make bread every once in a while. It is not a regular thing, I just don't eat that much bread. But for me, it is the fun of mastering a process, so I still keep my starter going. Day 4. Again, not much rising, but I will feed this again. At this point, I am going to move the remaining starter to a jar and store it in the fridge. There are many ways to use this up. Recipes that call for discard? Well, this is discard. I will show you a pancake recipe I like to do that uses discard and a few other ingredients and comes together quickly. In the meantime, the starter is fed. I will make sure to adjust the rubber band to the level of the starter and put it back in my warm location. Discard pancakes are a great way to use up extra starter. Also consider adding it to cookies, biscuits, or making crackers with it. Cookies and biscuits will take on a slight tang, more if allowed to cold proof overnight, while crackers get extra crisp. For my particular pancake recipe, I put about half a cup of starter in a measuring cup and I add 2 tablespoons of sugar, about a teaspoon of baking powder, about half a teaspoon of vanilla, about 1 teaspoon of oil, and a generous pinch of salt. Mix that really well. You will taste the sour in the spots that didn't get incorporated well. And pan fry with a bit of oil or butter. Do keep an eye on it. For some reason, I find that sourdough things take longer to toast, which increases the chance of it suddenly burning. I sometimes put an egg in the pancake if I am making more than one and my starter is stiffer. The extra liquid helps. If you are finding your batter is too stiff, add a touch of water. If you're finding this helpful so far, let me know by hitting that like button. And if you have any sourdough questions, drop them in the comments. I'm happy to help. As you feed daily, slowly begin changing your ratio if you want. A 1-to-1 is perfectly acceptable and what most people and recipes use, but a slightly runnier sourdough has a different flavor than a stiffer sourdough. Don't be afraid to divide your starter in two and experiment to determine which you like better. For short-term storage, I feed my starter and give it a couple of hours to begin multiplying. Then I put it in the fridge where it can continue to grow more slowly. For long-term storage, I like to feed the starter and get it going for a few hours, then overwhelm it with flour. Basically add enough flour that it is a dry mess. I can rehydrate the floury mess when I am ready to begin using it again. I store it in the fridge until that day. This will change the flavor of your starter. Mine became more mild. I have tried freezing and dehydrating and neither worked for me. Simply storing it in the fridge, even without the extra flour, was a better method than freezing or drying. Your mileage may vary, but I had no luck. As for when to use your starter, there are several indications to look for. Doubling in size in 4 to 6 hours consistently, strong predictable activity after every feed, lots of bubbles and an aerated texture. Glass jars are best when looking for this sign. It should smell tangy and yeasty. It might smell more sour or less sour depending on when in the growth cycle you are smelling it. It should not smell like alcohol or acetone, as that means the starter is hungry. Not a sign of failure, but do jump on getting it fed to prevent dying off and an imbalance of your bacteria and yeast populations. Best to do a reset on your starter when this happens. This entails doing a large dilution of your starter, a 1 to 5 to 5 or a 1 to 10 to 10 ratio to really dilute out any overpopulation of bacteria, and it gives your starter a fresh start. And finally, when you lift up a spoonful, there should be an elastic, webby texture, a stretch to the starter like a well-formed dough would have. All these are signs of a strong, healthy starter, but they do not all have to be there at the same time. It is best to use your starter when your starter reaches its peak of activity, essentially just before it starts falling. This will have the most active growth of the yeast, and the bacteria hasn't built up to super sour levels yet. Sourdough doesn't have to be intimidating. Whether you're baking bread, making discard pancakes, or just experimenting, a strong starter gives you endless possibilities and can save you money. If you found this video useful, check out my other sourdough video for more tips or my pizza video for stretch and fold techniques. And thanks for watching.